Welcome back to the Season 8 finale of Killer Stories. I'm your host, Bobby Holmes. Grab your popcorn and take a seat because this one's a doozy. The case I'm covering this week is the Stockdale murders, aka the wife swap murders. This suggestion was sent in by listener Sarah Cannon. The reason it is also referred to as the wife swap murders is because the Stockdale family appeared in an episode of the ABC show back in 2008. I watched this episode for research, which I found on Paramount Network if anyone is interested. It's Season 4, Episode 15. I used to watch Wife Swap back in the day and forgot how absolutely ridiculous it is. It makes me wonder why anyone would want to participate. The families chosen to swap are polar opposites. The mother or wife in each family switch places for 2 weeks. In the first week, they get to see how the opposite family lives day to day and follow the guidelines left for them. Then the tables are turned and the new wife gets to make the rules. The husband and children experience a completely different lifestyle, which doesn't always go over well. It ends with a meeting of the wives, and they essentially point and scream from across the table, telling each other how terrible they are. There have been a few exceptions where the families are civil and actually learn something from one another, but for the most part, they are beyond happy to be reunited with their own family, running into each other's arms with a newfound appreciation for what they have. Let's get a little background on the Stockdale family. They were uber religious and lived on a farm in rural Ohio. They believed living a simple life in the country would keep their children sheltered from bad influences. I understand wanting to keep your kids safe and have them grow up with good morals, but there's a line. Tim, the patriarch, and his 4 sons were in a bluegrass band. He played lead guitar. Calvin played the banjo. Charles the mandolin, Jacob the fiddle, and James the stand-up bass. Their mother, Kathy, worked as the band's manager. The Stockdale family band won 4 first-place awards in the regional bluegrass contests over the years, and also placed second in the Single Mic Championship and Youth in Bluegrass competitions. Jacob started playing the fiddle when he was just 7 years old. He won the Ohio State Grand Champion Fiddle Contest. Then he traveled to Idaho for the national competition and got 12th in his age category. Obviously a talented bunch. Sarah Cannon, the listener who suggested this case, said that the Stockdale family band performed every year at a church camp she attended in Ohio as a kid. Everyone at her camp thought the Stockdale boys seemed a little strange and extremely sheltered, but no one expected the tragedy that happened within this Christian family 9 years later. All of the boys were homeschooled by Kathy. In 2008, the oldest son, Calvin, was 19 and out of school, but he continued living with his parents and working on the farm. At this time, the boys ranged from 11 to 19, and the band did a performance every single weekend, which is a lot to ask of an 11-year-old. It's basically a job. Between that and their chores, none of them had spare time to just be a kid and have fun. They weren't allowed to play with friends. In fact, they didn't have any. Tim, their father, had a job and was gone during the day, Monday through Friday. While he was gone, the kids were responsible for maintaining the self-sufficient farm and keeping the house clean. From what I gathered, Kathy's responsibility was to cook hearty homemade meals for their family. Just about everything they ate was raised or grown on their farm, like livestock, eggs, vegetables, and the milk was straight from their cows. They even churned their own butter. On top of that, keeping track of the boys' chores and reward chart seemed like a full-time job in itself. Kathy had a system using reward tokens. Every completed chore earned a token. But if you completed the chore with attitude, you didn't get a token. You must do it with a smile on your face or it doesn't count. When a child collected a certain amount of tokens, they could cash them in for a reward. One reward option was to listen to a radio show, pre-chosen by Kathy. They weren't allowed to listen to pop music or anything with cussing in it. When it came to music, their options were Christian or bluegrass. They did not have cable TV or allow the boys to play any type of video game. They thought these things would turn them into brainless zombies. The eldest boys, Calvin and Charles, were 19 and 16 years old. Neither of them had ever spent time with a girl. In fact, outside of church and their performances, they didn't really leave the farm. Being in the presence of a female was seen as dating to Tim and Kathy, and they believed dating led directly to premarital sex and ultimately pregnancy. This is a quote from Kathy on the show. "I think that dating has physical dangers like pregnancy. It's not worth it. It's important we have control over their character and their education." The boys had no idea what was going on in the real world outside of their farm. They were never able to make their own choices or decisions. This isn't guidance, it's more like brainwashing. But the boys didn't know any different. Until Kathy Stockdale swapped lives with Tori Tonkovic for 2 weeks. Now, I'm not saying I approve of the Tonkovic lifestyle either. Like I stated earlier, they are both extreme on different ends of the spectrum. They let their adult children live at home and do whatever they wanted. Both their son's girlfriend and their daughter's boyfriend lived in their home as well, and none of them had jobs. They just expected handouts. During the swap, the Tonkovic family did pick up on some tips from Kathy Stockdale. They had to do chores around the house to earn the money that Lori gave them. But Tim Stockdale and his boys had a hard time with their new rules in the second week of the swap. Lori wanted the boys to experience a little fun in their life. She gave them a whole week off from their chores and set up a video game console. This wasn't in the show, but Lori Tonkovic came forward saying that when she gave them the opportunity to watch TV and play games, Jacob ran outside crying. Lori approached him and asked what was wrong. He explained that his parents told him that he would, quote, burn in hell if he did such things. But they all calmed down enough to enjoy a little bit of screen time. Lori's son was a rapper, and there are big air quotes there. Trust me, you've never heard of them. She had the Stockdale family band write a rap to perform together, and the boys were really enjoying themselves, and honestly, I think Tim was too. It really seems as if the family was forbidden to have fun. The bigger issue was dating. Lori found it absurd that these boys were denied the chance to meet girls. She arranged for 19-year-old Calvin and 16-year-old Charles to go on a double date. Tim freaked out. He said, "I don't care for them to experience that." He said he did it at their age and knows what it's all about, which apparently means sex. Yes, teenagers' hormones are roaring, but there are plenty of people who date and are still able to save themselves for marriage. It is possible. At first, Calvin was very upset at Lori's request. She explained she wasn't going to force anyone to do anything. She just wanted them to ignore their dad for a minute. Just take him out of the equation and ask themselves what they wanted to do. Both Calvin and Charles went on the date and had a great time. They literally smiled from ear to ear. It was just an innocent get-together at a restaurant. No one got pregnant. Tim asked Calvin if he would want to do that again, to which he said yes. But sadly, in an update at the end of the show, Calvin said there was no second date. Which means 14-year-old Jacob never got to experience that moving forward. Watching the episode back, there isn't much interaction with Jacob in comparison to his older and younger brothers. Maybe it's middle child syndrome, or simply he was more shy. As the years went on, the eldest boys, Calvin and Charles, moved out of the house. Calvin worked at Hillsdale College in Michigan. By this time, he had married and started his own family. Charles was attending medical school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Because both of them were now living out of state, the Stockdale family band brought in a new band member, Joe Steiner. He played the harmonica and the banjo, trying to fill the void left by Calvin and Charles. According to Jacob, he enjoyed playing in the family band even into his mid-20s. He started branching off with his younger brother James singing a cappella. They made an album together titled Farm Fresh. The Stockdale family appeared to be doing well. So what triggered the tragic event June 15th, 2017? A 911 call was placed in Stark County, Ohio. When the dispatcher answered, the caller hung up. The return call went unanswered, so police and EMS followed up. They approached the Stockdale farmhouse and opened the door. They saw a person moving out of the corner of their eye and then heard a gunshot. Lying on the ground near the front door was 21-year-old James Stockdale. Upstairs was the body of Kathy Stockdale. Both were shot with a 12-gauge shotgun and pronounced dead on the scene. The shooter was 25-year-old Jacob Stockdale. When police opened the door to their home, he attempted to take his own life. As you can imagine, doing so with a long-barreled gun may be a little awkward and difficult. He basically shot the left side of his face off. He was still alive, but in critical condition. He was rushed to a hospital and underwent surgery to save his life. Then he went through multiple plastic surgeries on his face. Over a year went by before Jacob was rehabilitated enough to be charged with his crimes. In early 2019, Jacob's defense team requested a psych evaluation. His intention was to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. He underwent mental health treatments in a psychiatric facility until February 2020. This is when he was deemed fit to stand trial, even though he attempted to escape twice during his 5-month stay. In April of 2021, Jacob pled guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder. His father and brothers asked that the judge be lenient with his sentencing. Even though Jacob killed his wife and his youngest son, Tim still supported him through the whole process, showing love and forgiveness, which I'm sure would be so difficult. He was truly devastated by the loss. Tim said, quote, "Kathy has been my beloved wife of 32 years and a wonderful mother to our 4 sons. She loved nothing more than being a mother and a grandmother. She had a strong love of learning and was passionate about her Christian faith, natural health, and organic farming." Jacob was sentenced to 15 years for each murder, which was to be served consecutively, so 30 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2048. There are so many unanswered questions in this case. First of all, who called 911? It was dialed from the landline. Was it James or Kathy when they heard Jacob fire that first shot? Did Jacob interrupt and hang up the phone? Or was he the one who dialed 911 after killing his family members? Was it his plan all along to attempt suicide, or was it a fight or flight response to the police arriving? Something that has never been shared with the public was Jacob's motive, which of course got everyone coming up with their own theories. Lori Tonkovic spoke to the media after she heard about the Stockdale tragedy. She believes that Jacob snapped due to 25 years in a house with overbearing parents. Others believe that being on Wife Swap may have played a role in that. Before Kathy and Lori switched places, the Stockdale boys seemed content. They didn't know anything about television or video games, or gasp, dating. But Lori introduced them to all of it, most of which was taken back away when she left the house. At the end of the Wife Swap episode, it looks like they kept video games as a reward option on the token chart, at least temporarily. So imagine this. You are told you will burn in hell if you do this thing. Then this other mom lets you do the thing. Then the thing is taken away again. But you kind of still want to do the thing. This could have created an internal struggle of morals for the Stockdale boys. Another theory is simply that Jacob Stockdale suffered from a mental illness, one that went undiagnosed and untreated, leading to a mental break. And finally, perhaps the Stockdales weren't as squeaky clean as they seemed. Who knows what really went down in that household? Maybe there is a reason Tim wanted a lenient sentence for him, and Jacob refrained from sharing his motive. Let it be known that's not necessarily my theory. I don't want any angry Stockdales sending me a DM. Simply stating theories I've come across. The truth is, no one knows why he did it. It was somewhat eerie watching the episode of Wife Swap, knowing that both Kathy and James were now deceased. I tried to focus on Jacob while watching it, but like I stated earlier, I didn't think he had as much screen time as his other siblings. I basically covered the whole episode, but it's still worth a watch if you're interested. Again, that's season 4, episode 15. And that was the case of the Stockdale murders, aka the wife swap murders. Just this morning, I received a Facebook message from listener Donna Nurnberger Brockmiller. She said, "Bobby, yours is the first podcast I listen to and thoroughly enjoy each episode. While I have heard some of your cases, you have shared some of which I had no knowledge. Stuart and Lorraine, as well as Penn, are fascinating guests, and the contributions are always captivating. I hope my new listeners take the next few weeks to catch up. If you're already there, I have some other podcasts for you to check out until season 9 starts. First, my friends and fellow podcasters, Stuart Blues of British Murders, as well as Lorraine Purdon of Once Upon a Nightmare and her new podcast, American Murder Stories. I may bring in another Killer Creatures and hoping to do some co-hosting with Stuart and Lorraine again in the near future, and I'll share the details on my social media. So be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Killer Stories Podcast, and I'm on Twitter at Killer Story Pod. I just recently changed the handle. I also enjoy listening to Murder with My Husband. There's new episodes every Monday, and an oldie but a goodie, Case File. Continue sending in story suggestions to killerstoriespodcast@gmail.com, and I'll keep adding to my list for future episodes. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate all the reviews and feedback I get from you. I hope you all have a great summer. Until next time, this has been a Killer Story.